It is crazy. You're thinking about joining the military. I just want to be completely honest of what I've gone through, what I'm currently going through, what the experiences have taught me. The Navy has helped me with buying my first official car, getting my first official apartment. I'm in the process of also buying a home very soon. But yeah, I just really want to say that it's a life-changing decision that you're making to join the military, because it's not going to be easy by any means, but it rewards you so much and it teaches you so much. I'm going to roll a clip of what it's really like to be in the middle of the ocean for weeks or months at a time in a deployment, and it's pretty crazy. So let's show.
Love yours. No such thing. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. Love yours. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing. No such thing.
Yeah, that video was pretty cool. I took that back in my 2022 deployment when I went to Greece, Israel, Spain, Bahrain. That deployment taught me a lot, and it was only about 5 months long, I believe, so that's the longest I've gone. My ship is currently deployed right now for 9 months, or 8 months, but I'm pregnant, so I wasn't able to join that deployment that they're currently in, and they're going to so many cool countries that I've never been in, so I'm a little jealous, but it's okay because I have a baby on the way and it's what I most desired and was dreaming of for so long. So the first topic I'm going to be talking about is why I joined the military and why I joined the Navy specifically. So after high school, I did a little bit of community college for a year, and it was all online because it was during COVID time. I was really discouraged by the image, or just like college overall, because obviously I had to be on a computer and I wasn't planning on going out or making friends like in person, just because everything was very risky at the time. But I knew that with the 2 jobs that I was working, it was very stressful, and all the income I was making was good money, but all the income that I was making was just for my bills and my necessities that I needed, because at the time I was living alone. I felt kind of stuck in my hometown, and I wanted something bigger for myself. I wanted to go on vacations. I wanted to travel more. Travel was the #1 thing for me, and I couldn't do that. I remember, it's kind of funny, I was actually at a car wash. I came across this like ad on my phone, and it said like, oh, put in your information if you want to join the military. I got kind of caught in the middle of that, but I ended up putting my information. I think it was only like 2 hours I left the car wash that a recruiter actually contacted me, and they called me and they were like, hey, are you interested in possibly joining the military? And I was like, oh no, it was just from an ad that I really couldn't click out of, but it's not for me, like I'm not looking at anything like that. And then he suggested that I still came by the office and checked it out and see if I would one day potentially be interested, that there was no pressure. And so I ended up agreeing, and that's how it goes on from there, my story. The main reason why I joined was because I wanted to get out of my small town that I was living in for my entire life, which by the way was an amazing experience all throughout high school. But then I also just wanted to travel and become even more independent than what I already was, and just see what else life had to offer for me. And I've always been up to challenges. I remember taking on the role to secretary for ASB and leadership. I was in sports and tennis and cheer and dance, and I just love putting myself out there. I was like, this would be a good challenge, and honestly, I think it would teach me a lot. And so that is why I decided to go into boot camp. Now, boot camp was rough, to say the least, because I went during the winter time, and I remember it was so cold during the time that I went. I think it was like end of January. Yeah, it was middle of January. And it got so cold to the point where like when we would go out to march, I had literal ice on my eyelashes. Like I had little icicles forming on my eyelashes. And I remember my feet just hurting so bad from the snow. It was miserable at the time, but I didn't know. I just was trying to get out. Now, it's such a huge accomplishment when you know you're like a few days away from graduating boot camp, and I'll insert a video of like my actual graduation here. But that was one of my proudest moments, and I was actually a flag in the very front of the crowd, marching, holding the flag like this. I remember it was so heavy, and I just wanted to see my family already. It was just such an overwhelming experience of happiness, sadness, just feeling so proud, and a lot of pride.
Division 1, 2-8.
And I can talk about boot camp more into depth if you guys would be interested in that. Moving on, I'm gonna talk about food and what you get to eat. The food is pretty repetitive and it is not good, and especially if you're a picky eater, you're gonna struggle a lot and you might even lose a lot of weight. I remember on Wednesdays, like for example, it was Burger Wednesday, Italian Thursday, so it was always like the same thing. Or even for Sundays, right? Sundays would be lobster and steak. So people would get more happy or more like excited about those meals. And then they would also like give out ice cream on Sundays and do like waffles in the mornings. It just depends if you have good CSs on your ship. Every ship is different. Every CS is different. And if you have good connections, then like, you know, you can get your food custom made sometimes. I remember when I was working with the CSs, actually, because that's part of what you're gonna do eventually when you get onto a ship. If you're lucky, you don't ever have to go through FSAing, but that is food service attendant. I have many CS friends that I'm so very thankful for, but one in specific in particular that I worked with every single day to serve the officers at that time was CS3 Lou. He literally saved me from starving a majority of my time on deployment. And I remember he would like custom make my food, and I would be like, hey, can I get this instead, or can you cook this more well done for me? Especially with like meat, I have a thing with meat that I like it very well done. I would say that making connections on the ship, whether it's with the CSs for your food, if you're a very picky eater, if not, then you don't have to worry about it. The food will be just fine for you. Honestly, for me, the vending machines were lifesavers, but at the same time, it was not healthy at all what I was eating. It is full of candy and chips, donuts, like those little powdery white donuts that I remember at one time I was eating like 3 of those packs a day, and I was getting chips like every other day, M&Ms with the peanuts in it, and it was just so bad. Like my diet on the ship was beyond the worst that I've ever experienced in my life. And then they had vending machines for soda cans like Sprite, Coke, Diet Pepsi, all those things. We had another vending machine full of energy drinks. I'm talking about Monsters and Red Bulls. And that is one of the first times that I ever got, like, I guess you could say a little hooked on to Red Bulls. Because at one point I remember, especially like my 2 to 7 watch, if it was past midnight or 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I mean, I was just dying. And like I said, on top of my nauseousness and getting seasick, I needed that energy. I found myself buying those watermelon Red Bulls a lot. I think it was no sugar or low sugar, the white Monsters. Like I was just drinking way too many energy drinks. And I knew at the time like it was bad for me, but it was the only thing that would save me from not falling asleep on watch. And that is a huge thing. Like you absolutely cannot fall asleep on watch unless you want to go to captain's mast and really get in trouble for it. Sometimes you can get away with it. Now, what is life like after boot camp? After boot camp, you end up spending, I think like you could do the weekend or something, or a few days with your family if they decide to stay in Chicago or wherever you're going to. If you're flying out for school, then obviously you have like a few hours with your family. But for me, I was fortunate enough, my school was actually right across the boot camp in Chicago. So my parents actually ended up booking hotels for like 10 days, and they stayed with me to explore throughout Chicago while I was waiting to enroll in my school for my rate, which is a quartermaster. And my school, I think, was another 10 weeks. It was about the same time as my boot camp. After A school and after passing all of your tests, that is when you then get orders to where you're going for your contract. So for me, I got orders to Florida, and I got orders to a destroyer ship. I got to my ship back in July of 2022, and at that time, obviously I was brand new. I was very stressed because I had just gotten out of school, and I was like, I don't know if I remember everything, but you end up learning everything in person, like on the ship. Majority of like your school stuff is gonna be helpful, but really you won't get the actual taste of your job until you get to the ship and you actually do hands-on experiences. August, September, October, and it was only about 3-4 months after I got to my ship that we were told we were getting deployed, and that was my first deployment. I would say the hardest thing for me was getting seasick. And at the time, I didn't know if I was gonna be a person who would get seasick, but I did know like I easily get dizzy if we're going, like even on roller coasters, they're so much fun, but for me, I knew I was probably most likely gonna struggle with it. I had to be under instruction for my actual watch and what I was doing for my job from 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning to 7 in the morning. And so getting up at that time from your little rack that you have that they set for you on the ship, and then having to walk up all the way to the pilot house, which is where I work. I remember just being so nauseous, and I was throwing up 5 times a day. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't drink anything. If it was anything that I was drinking, it was just mainly water and orange juice and juices like that, because I knew that when I had to go and throw up, it would just be juice or water. Even with my seasick pills, it barely helped. At one point, it got so bad. I remember I was in my rack and I was just shaking and I felt so weak. I had to go to medical on the ship, and they had to give me a shot to stop me from throwing up so much. They tried even the patch behind my ear, and that worked for a little bit, but they ended up running out of the patches, and I didn't know I could purchase them myself before I left on the deployment. I just knew about the seasick pills, and I thought I would be okay with that. And eventually, like, the seas calmed down, but at the time we were going through the Atlantic. It was real cold, and the ship was just, I mean, literally rocking like this. Like, you could see everything. Is that something that you're prepared to leave family and friends behind and not see them for a long time, especially if you get stationed like super far from where you live, or even overseas, to make matters worse or better, because overseas can be really fun too. But are you just ready to say goodbye to your parents for a while, to your siblings, to those closest to you? Because that is honestly one of the hardest things that I've gone through. I'm a very independent person, so I dealt with it really well, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still very sad to not be able to see my family, especially on holidays. For my deployment back in 2022, I spent Halloween there, my birthday, my dad's birthday, Christmas, New Year's. You think about your family back at home and you're just in the middle of the ocean. So is that something that you really want and you're ready for? Yeah, so that's something to think about. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is some rates don't even get to go outside to get like sunshine or any light. Like, they forget that you can go outside and get some fresh air, but it's mostly like the rates that are very busy, like engineer rates, or have really long watch hours, and all they want to do is go to sleep, eat, and relax. I was very lucky because as a quartermaster, I get to be up on the pilot house, so I can always see the sunrise, the sunset whenever I wanted, and get that fresh air. But like I said, a lot of people forget to go outside and actually enjoy some fresh air. Some don't go for weeks at a time because they're so busy with their job. And that's another thing to just prepare yourself for. Okay, now the perks of traveling. That was unforgettable. And I think I'll definitely be going through it again because I'm gonna be signing up for a few more contracts here. I don't know yet where my life is headed after this baby comes out. But one of my most memorable countries that I've been to was Greece and Spain. Those were like my top two favorite, and then Bahrain, of course. So I'll try to insert a few videos here, but you get to go to luxurious hotels, you get to try new food, you get to see the different cultures of people, and you get to buy all these cool souvenirs. You get to save a lot of money on deployment if you really set yourself to that goal. You can save up to 10 to 20 to 30 grand on a deployment depending your rank and how much money you make. Also depending if you're receiving BAH, which BAH stands for Basic Allowance Housing. It's basically an extra pay, like a raise bump to help with wherever you're planning to live in, an apartment, a home, with the rent basically. Yeah, it's all up to you how much you decide to save on a deployment, or if you want to go all crazy and go to bars every other night and spend like crazy amount of money, which I know a few sailors who did choose that route, and then I was kind of like in the middle. I didn't really like to go partying too much, but I remember for my 21st birthday I did spoil myself, and I actually got drunk for the very first time in my life in Bahrain, and that was just a wild experience, one that I don't regret doing, but I wouldn't do again. Yeah, just thinking back to all those good times of a deployment and what it teaches you. Really like being in the middle of the ocean, going outside, getting some fresh air and looking at the stars. Man, like I'm really out here. What am I doing with my life? But at the same time, how much is this teaching me? And will it be good for me in the future? Again, the military offers a very stable income. Of course, you have to work your way up there because I think like starting E1 pay is really nothing, like nothing. Even with BAH, it can be hard to balance it because you're paying your rent and then, you know, you have really just a little bit left over, or sometimes it just depends your situation. Everyone's situation is different. I would say that no matter what, you always know what you're gonna get every 2 weeks. Living conditions on the ship, at least for a destroyer and my ship, in my experience, we had like, you know, like the little bunk beds, but it was in 3. But for me, I was very fortunate to have a middle rack, which a lot of people say is one of the best racks that you can have, because the top one, obviously it's like really hard to get down from it. And especially if the seas are very crazy. And then the very bottom one, like there's a lot of flooding on the ship. And I just have to warn you, for underways and deployments, more than likely, like 90% of the time, you're going to experience flooding on the ship, especially in the restrooms, or we call them the heads. I'll also insert a video of how disgusting and nasty it can get up in there and clogged. Literal waste water, poop, piss water gets on the deck. And if you have a lower rack, then say goodbye to a lot of your stuff if it gets to be that high. But also the smell is just insane. I feel like I'm forgetting so much more in this video that I want to talk about, but I'll probably get some more feedback from you guys, or if you have any questions. But the very last thing that I want to say is, would I do this again? And the answer is absolutely. And by no means am I saying was my experience easy at all, because I had very hard times on there. The knowledge that I had in my rate, I always felt that I could do better. I wasn't pushing myself hard enough to get qualified fast enough at times as well. Even working with a very huge male to female ratio, very high male ratio, that was super hard. I definitely did go through a little bit of harassment. Very weird encounters on the ship with males, which Nothing like very serious, but there were encounters that I had that I just did not enjoy. And now looking back, I didn't take very serious at the time, but I just thought like you get so used to it at one point and it just becomes almost normal. Especially with me being a very outgoing person, it could always be taken the wrong way or be perceived the wrong way. And so I've learned so much from that, as well as being very trusting. Currently right now, like I said, I am 5 months pregnant going on to 6, and I'm currently shoreside. It's a little bit easier for me. The ship just drains you sometimes. I mean, honestly, it does. Having to like constantly be getting up and working on those qualifications that you know you need to get, and then doing trainings, and then doing fire drills. It's just a lot on the ship that, oh, and maintenance is another huge thing that you have to do. And for me personally, I'm very girly and I do not like touching any grease or oil or anything like that. And so when I learned that I had to do maintenance and I had to needle gun and preservation and paint and all those things, like it really taught me a lot. But I was never really good at it, you know, but I still did it because I had to. With that being said, I think I'm gonna wrap the video here. And I just really want to encourage you to at least try and see what the experience is like. If this is something that you're really considering doing, there's no harm in trying and doing something different for yourself, especially if you want to become more independent, travel, be on a stable income, and meet new people, meet new friends, meet different countries. Of course, every ship and every sailor's experience is going to be different, but I really wish you the best of luck. And if you have any questions or if you want to personally reach out, I will leave my socials in the description box. Good luck, guys. I really hope that this video was as informative as I thought it out to be. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.